Season 1, Episode 11, Day in the Life, aired November 29, 1991, with a total of 17.6 million views. Dana, Al, JT, and Karen are in the living room when Karen asks if they think she looks like the model in the magazine. Al is quick to say no, which upsets Karen because everyone at school thinks she does. JT chimes in and explains the model has bigger eyes, shorter hair, and most importantly, is blonde, which Karen isn't. Just then, Frank bursts through the front door, excited to see the kids. He announces that he has a big surprise and asks them to guess what it is. JT wonders if the plumber showed up on time at work, but Frank says no. He reveals that a TV show called America Up Close wants to do a segment on blended families, and they've picked the Foster Lambert household. Karen asks what a blended family is, and Dana sarcastically explains that it's what you get when their mom falls in love with Fred Flintstone and they move in with these cave people. Frank says the camera crew will be arriving tomorrow, and Al and JT are excited. Karen sees it as her big break and a stepping stone to New York. Frank rushes into the kitchen to tell Carol and Penny the news. He's bursting with excitement, but Carol isn't thrilled. Penny guesses wildly about what the news might be, and when Frank tells them the family will be on America Up Close, Penny is thrilled. Carol, not so much. Carol doesn't like the idea of cameras invading their home and says they've only been married 2 months, barely know each other, and the kids are always fighting. Frank brushes it off, saying all kids fight, and that it'll be fine. But then Carol finds out that Frank already signed the contract without even asking. She's furious, and although Frank tries to reassure her, Carol is unconvinced. He ends the conversation with a nervous side hug and a joke, but Carol clearly isn't on board. The next day, JT complains about dressing up for the cameras. Frank tells them they need to look good for Carol doesn't. The next day, JT complains about dressing up for the cameras. Frank tells him they need to look good for TV. He reminds JT and Dana to cut back on the wisecracks just as the doorbell rings. Carol panics, thinking it's the crew, and argues with Frank about who should answer the door. Dana finally opens it to the next day, JT complains about dressing up for the cameras. Frank tells them they need to look good for the TV. He reminds JT and Dana to cut back on the wisecracks just as the doorbell rings. Carol panics, thinking it's the crew, and argues with Frank about who should answer the door. Dana finally opens it, and it's just Cody. She smiles and immediately slams the door in his face. Carol reopens it, asking him why he rang the bell since he usually just walks in. Cody jokes that he's never used the front door before and compliments their pretty nice place when he walks in. When the actual camera crew arrive, Frank introduces them to the family. Carol is still nervous and asks what they want her to do. The crew tells her to just act normal and go about her daily routine. Penny rushes in, asking for help in the salon, and Carol, along with some of the crew, head off with her. Meanwhile, Karen comes downstairs with a complete makeover, now trying to look, speak, and act just like the model in the magazine. Later, Carol is cooking in the kitchen and talking to the camera, clearly not acting natural. JT and Dana run in, fighting over the phone. Carol lies to the crew, saying her kids never fight, it's just the cameras making them act out. A screen comes from the living room, cuts her off. Carol rushes into the living room to find Karen and Al fighting. Karen wants a scarf that Al put on her pig, even though she doesn't care about the scarf anymore. Meanwhile, Cody is serenading Dana in the kitchen, and Dana bluntly tells them, on camera, that it's the worst song she's ever heard. Everything spirals into chaos, and Carol finally loses it. She yells for everyone to stop and demands the cameras be turned off. She pulls Frank into the kitchen angrily and says, "I told you so." Frank still thinks it'll get better the next day. but Carol reminds him that everything she warned him about has already happened. Then she sees a camera filming them. She screams, heads to her room, or, as Frank quickly corrects her for the cameras, our room. Carol fires back, not tonight, leaving Frank nervous that the cameras caught it all. The next day, Carol is still mad. The kids notice something's off between their parents. Dana suspects it's because of the cameras and gathers all the kids in the salon without the camera crew. Mark is followed by cameramen, but Penny steps in and distracts the crew so Mark can sneak in. Al is thrilled their parents might break up because of all the fighting. Dana says it's not likely, but the fighting is bad enough to ruin their lives. She suggests they try to act like a loving, blended family, at least for the cameras. Back in the kitchen, Frank tries to talk to Carol, but she ignores him. When Cody asks her how her day was, she answers him politely. Mark and Brendan come in, being unusually nice to each other, which raises suspicion. They admit that they're trying to stop the fighting so Carol and Frank won't be on their case. Carol appreciates the effort, but says she hopes it's genuine, not just an act for the cameras. Later, Frank apologizes for screwing things up. Carol forgives him, and they share a sweet moment. They agree that it would be nice if the kids could actually get along. But when they walk into the living room, hoping to see their kids getting along, they are surprised when they see them back to fighting, and the Monopoly money from the game they were playing goes flying everywhere.